Okay, what about a percentage of the total value? Like 75% of the total value?
No, that's not how... I'm sorry, how do you know my parents?
Or what about an exchange? For that rock?
No.
No, okay. What about these? No? Understood. This shelf. And that's gonna be my final.
Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic and you're watching The Armchair Auteur. It's an ongoing video series I do here where I review new movies, old movies, do screenplay analysis, talk about film culture. If you're a big movie nerd and you like seeing people pick film apart and discuss it and all that jazz, you should consider subscribing. Today we're taking another small spooky break from the Spooktoberfest theme of October here on the channel to review a movie that just hit VOD that I have been excited about for months. That movie is Miranda July's Kajillionaire. So obviously this doesn't fit the theme, but it is a movie I've been like really dying to see and talk about, and now that I've seen it, I want to talk to you guys about it. Miranda July is an independent filmmaker whose work I really used to love back in the day. Like when Me and You and Everyone We Know and The Future both came out, like at the time those movies were released, they were definitely like favorite films of mine. But I've never really gone back and like re-examined them, mostly because I always felt like watching them anew, I would like pick them apart, not like them as much or find them too quirky or something. But Kajillionaire looked different enough to me that I was still really excited to see it. I thought the premise was really cool, and I was very curious to see what it's like to see a Miranda July movie where she is not also the leading star and actress, and that she's just writing and directing, and then there's like other actors populating those roles. Kajillionaire follows Evan Rachel Wood as a character named Old Dolio, a young woman who was raised by two grifter con artist parents, played by Richard Jenkins and Debra, who raised her to be nothing more than a partner of crime. Like her entire upbringing, she had nothing resembling normal child rearing. She is literally just sort of like a piece of their puzzle. This little fake family unit lives at the margins of the world, getting by on petty and quirky schemes they can barely survive upon. But throughout the film, the particular cons that Old Dolio gets roped into begin to highlight the life she never had and how empty her existence has been. This dovetails in the meeting Melanie, played by Gina, a prospective mark who Old Dolio's parents treat exceptionally better than they treat her. So throughout the film, she has to come to terms with the codependency that has plagued her life since birth and learn to accept a more loving life. Now, I want to preface my heavy, serious recommendation for this film that I loved with the caveat that Miranda July's approach to filmmaking is not for everyone. You know how like if you watch an independent movie when it's a kind of quirky and artsier, and you could take out any 5-minute clip of the movie out of context and show it to a friend who does not like independent movies, and their only response would be like, what is this white nonsense? That's Miranda July. She makes movies that I think people would categorize as like, quote-unquote, white nonsense. But I think it's kind of reductive because, in my opinion, her work in general is pretty strong. Yes, she's sort of the epitome of that style and what people think of when they think about independent movies, but like the persistent quirkiness is sort of like a surface thing. Underneath that, underlying that, I think that she imbues so many of her films with like a real sense of emotionality that is really affecting and I think real touching. In this film, I feel like she finds such wonderment in the detailed obsession with the little transactions of life. The average con man or heist film works on a larger, more lucrative scale, so watching this little clan try to sell Amazon packages that they've stolen or barter gift certificates is such a weird approach to the genre. They're trifles compared to what we usually see on screen, but she still imbues those sequences with genuine suspense, while still making them pretty laughable to behold. But the two things about the movie that I think make it such a strong, interesting film are the way it depicts poverty and also the way it depicts how much a lack of intimacy can really cripple a person. I feel like not very many movies are actually really good at depicting like brokenness on screen, and it's for a number of reasons. One is that I feel like a lot of successful filmmakers, regardless of where they came from before they became successful, can just no longer relate to the world of actually struggling to get by. So when they try to depict that sort of viewpoint, they don't know how to actually like recreate it. It's like a foreign concept to them. Another reason is because in general, I don't think people like to watch movies about being broke, either because you are broke and you would prefer to escape from your actual like real life surroundings, or you're not broke and you can't relate to it in any way, shape, or form, so watching someone depicted on screen is like odd to you. And thirdly, because when people do try to make stories about broke people and poverty and stuff, in general, I feel like they're shown in a very awkward and exploitative way. It's just like people pointing a camera at like poor people in like other countries and stuff, and it's just designed for like upper class people to watch and kind of go, oh, that really sucks for them. I feel for them. I'm gonna go maybe give it to a charity and like move on with their lives and not care anymore. For that reason, typically movies about like living on the outskirts, barely getting by and stuff, they just don't seem to be successful or commonplace in the mainstream marketplace anyway. But similar to the family in Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which obviously was very successful, I feel like Kajillionaire really captures like what it's like to have to hustle and grift to get by. Obviously, her parents in this film are like actually kind of shitty people regardless of the fact that like they're so broke, and part of the reason they're so broke is generally because they refuse to try to live by traditional means, and they sort of belittle the idea of people getting regular jobs and living like normal. But regardless, Old Dolio's character, who's the actual star of the show, really captures what it's like and how dehumanizing it can be to have to do certain things to struggle and get by in life, and how it makes you feel like less of a person. Throughout this film, everything for her is very transactional because it's all she knows. She does not understand how to connect to people except within the context of like trading something for something else. And that's, that speaks to, I think, a lot of people, especially today. And while the trauma inflicted on her by her parents is not strictly informed by the push and pull of capitalism, watching her struggle and come to these realizations that she's never had any sort of real intimacy from these people in her life and never been able to move outside of their jobs to form relationships with other people is really, really heartbreaking. It's like, it's not like a big, dramatic melodrama type of thing, but just watching her like come to these little realizations and realize like she's never been held before and stuff like that. Like it's painful. It shouldn't work as well. Like it seems like it would be something that's a little bit too on the nose or too over the top. But Edward Wood's performance is really strong, and I think the writing and like the cinematography and everything really supports this take. Having to watch her become ostracized by her parents in favor of someone who had the luxury of not being raised by their terribly destructive ways is it's painful. But the film's true triumph really comes in its third act. If this is just a movie that was like an hour and a half of like it being depressing and having shitty parents and not knowing your place in the world, like it would be whatever. But the fact that Miranda July is able to actually build to like a reasonable, believable, palpable, emotional crescendo is really startling to me because I didn't think she was going to pull it off. Like I was digging the movie. I was definitely feeling it the whole time throughout. And I was like, man, this is sad. Man, this sucks. Man, I want to hug. But by the time she got to the ending, I was actually really ecstatic because like it's kind of difficult to make movies that are about depressing subjects, even ones that are like filmed with this sort of like bubblegum quirk aesthetic or whatever. But it's genuinely difficult to transition from that approach to something that's really actually cathartic. And she pulled it off. Like everyone involved really does a fantastic job. And like the last act, the last few turns of the knife really, really surprised me. I think David Mamet says in Three Uses of the Knife, his book about dramaturgy, that the best ending in any kind of story is one that is both inevitable and surprising. And like when you get to the end of Kajillionaire, it's like, oh, of course that's kind of where it was going. But it doesn't feel like a foregone conclusion. It doesn't feel perfunctory. It feels like, oh, that's cool. Like I'm startled, but I'm also comforted. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the best endings of a movie I've seen all year. And I think that's because it's one of the best movies I've seen all year, like in any genre, in anything. And I'm really glad it's finally on VOD. Because it's not easy to get to in a theater for most people, obviously, now. And I really strongly suggest that if you are open to like more kind of quirky, weird indie movies, you should definitely seek it out. It's really something. Those are my feelings about Kajillionaire. Really like the movie. I'm definitely going to put this in like my top 10 for the year, even though this is going to be like a weird asterisk year for movie lists. But I do think it's fantastic, and I think you guys should check it out. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos. We will be back on track with more spooky content in a few days, so keep an eye out for that. More Halloween-y stuff until the end of October. So yeah, I hope everyone's staying safe out there. Thank you guys so much, and have a great day.